I call the honourable member Todd McLeay.
Mr Speaker, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to rise so early in this debate and speak on what was an excellent budget. Can I congratulate our Minister of Finance, Bill English, for delivering another budget for New Zealanders, a budget for the times. A budget for New Zealand, a budget for New Zealanders, not for Greece before the members opposite start talking about the policies they would bring to this country, not for the Eurozone, of course, the challenges they're facing, not the USA or other parts of the world, but a budget which invests in New Zealanders, a budget for the future, and this is, of course, Mr Speaker, a government for the future and of the future. And I say that not just because of the way that members opposite talk about their policies as if those 9 years in government, that long time ago, were the best of times. Because, Mr Speaker, New Zealanders woke up and they said it wasn't the best of times. The spin that came from members opposite, it was not the best of times. This was a budget for the times, as I said, and I commend Bill English. Can I say to our Prime Minister, John Key, that the New Zealand public not only trusts him, they voted for him in record numbers to continue to lead this country towards a brighter future. Towards a brighter future. And that's the problem we have, Mr Speaker, and I say to my colleagues on this side of the House, we must be extremely cautious that when we've had a number of terms in government, we don't end up like members opposite who still after 3 years are not listening to the public, who think the public will wake up and realise that they got it wrong and that those years, all that time ago, was a good time for them here in New Zealand and that they made a mistake and should change their vote. Well, it wasn't a mistake. They made a clear and conscious choice as to who they wanted to govern this country. They had an opportunity to reflect upon that at the election last year, and they moved forward with that, Mr Speaker, in giving Prime Minister John Key the biggest vote any party has ever had under MMP. Second time in a row, and that's quite some accomplishment. So, Mr Speaker, the budget, what's it going to do? Well, it focuses on 4 key areas I believe are extremely important to New Zealanders. Responsibly managing government finances. And can I say to the members opposite who last week voted against legislation that will save $347 million over 4 years to reinvest in our economy and to grow productivity, to put more money into schools, to back New Zealanders, that actually if the point that they were making when deciding to vote against that legislation was that we should instead borrow that money, then just look at the newspapers and cast your mind all the way across the sea to Greece and other parts of Europe and the great problems they have because they haven't fronted up to their responsible issues, their responsibility. They haven't fronted up to the changes that they make. And if you keep borrowing, Mr Speaker, sooner or later you have to pay it back. Well, if members' office want to keep borrowing, it's the New Zealand public that will have to pay back. Building a more competitive and a productive economy, that's taking taxpayers' resources and spending them better for a better return on behalf of those taxpayers. And I think that the New Zealand taxpayer, Mr Speaker, over 9 years of a Labour government, has a lot to look forward to over the next 2 or 3 years of this government. Responsible spending of their money, building a more competitive and productive economy. Delivering better public services, and I'm going to talk about a couple of these areas in a moment, but can I recognise the unbelievably committed and focused job our Minister of Health, Tony Ryle, has done. And this isn't just about those 9 years under Labour, where they increased the spending significantly. I recognise members opposite, when they were in government, increased the health spend significantly. Somebody told me the other day they thought that they had almost doubled the health spend. That's commendable, almost doubled it. But productivity in health, that's mums and dads not receiving letters saying you can't see your doctor this week or you're not going to get your operation, but productivity in health, people being treated in the health system by our hard-working and excellent doctors and nurses didn't increase by the same amount. It didn't almost double. At best, it probably went up 10% over that period of time. Well, Mr Speaker, every single week our newspapers, and in Rotorua, our newspapers are full of praise of the Lakes DHB. The Lakes DHB is focusing on the great work that they're doing because last year more operations in Rotorua Hospital than any year before. Under Labor, we were just told they needed more money. That's what they needed to do these operations. Well, we found if you back doctors and back nurses, and you get more doctors and nurses, more people are treated, more people get better. Who would have thought, Mr. Speaker? It's not just about money, it's about doctors and nurses and the health service. Tony Ryle's done a fantastic job, delivered more money to health so that we can do more, but back doctors and nurses so that they can get on with the task the job New Zealanders want them to do. And the final point of this four-point plan is the rebuilding of Christchurch. Mr. Speaker, just over the weekend, more earthquakes in Christchurch. And I say that it's hard for us in the rest of the country to know what the people of Christchurch have gone through. But can I say to the people of Christchurch that this government has got their backs, this government is supporting them, and this government is continuing to make sure that the rebuilding of their city and their region is a priority. And that's very much what this government is focused on the last 3 years and this coming 3 years, lifting economic achievement, doing more for New Zealanders. Mr. Speaker, Christchurch was New Zealand's second largest city. A year or two ago it passed the size of Wellington. It was New Zealand's fastest growing city, and it was growth not based upon wasteful government spending that New Zealanders got used to over 9 years. It was growth based on productivity, productive growth, people producing things and getting on, manufacturing, selling them, taking that money back into their businesses, reinvesting it, growing employment. And if not for the earthquakes, can I say to New Zealanders, I think that our country would be in a very different position, and the books may look quite different. But it's a commitment that the government has made. It's a commitment that New Zealanders in my electorate tell me they want us to honour, to support the people of Christchurch, to rebuild their city, and at the same time to help rebuild our economy. Now, in finance, Mr. Speaker, getting the government's books back to surplus by 2014-2015. I've heard almost every member opposite, at least from the Labor Party, say it's not important. They've got their own plans and they'll borrow a bit more, and we'll do that in a few years in the future. Well, one only needs to look back a couple of years ago at countries like Greece, and they were saying similar things. Well, Mr. Speaker, the members opposite aren't fit to run this country. We cannot borrow and spend more than we earn forever. And that's what they're happy to do on the opposite side of this chamber. So this budget, Mr. Speaker, delivered by the able Bill English, gets us back to surplus by 2014-15. Members opposite will say, well, it's a modest surplus. It's only an odd $100 million here or there. But can I say, Mr. Speaker, when you are borrowing money, as this country has had to take as this government has had to take the sharper edges off the recession, $100 million here or there becomes very important. And when we add up all of the promises that the Labor Party have made over the years of the recession, a few $100 million here, $20 million over there, all the promises and commitments, well, it's not just a few $100 million. So this economy, Mr. Speaker, the government's books will be back to surplus, projected by Treasury 2014-2015. That means we can stop borrowing, we can start investing more in New Zealanders, and we can start looking at lowering our debt levels. And of course, the debt levels will peak around 30% of GDP. When we came to office, they were spiralling. They were forecast to spiral out of sight for the next 20 or 30 years. Mr. Speaker, we've turned that around. I want to finish here, if I may, in a moment, talking about education. A $511.9 million investment in children in this country. An admirable investment. Our hard-working Minister of Education, Heke Parata, has done a very good job to make sure that as a government we're doing the right things. We will invest in children and we will invest in teachers. Our teachers do a very good job on our behalf. I entrust 4 of my children to teachers to help educate them every day. And Mr. Speaker, we'll take some of this money, almost $60 million, and invest it in these teachers so they can continue to do a good job, and that together we can raise educational standards. Members opposite are right when they say this is all about the children and we must make sure we do everything we can for those children. But the last 9 years of a Labor government, when they spent things on money and education that didn't raise achievement, was a good trial. But that's all it was, a trial. It didn't succeed, and if we want to raise achievement, we must do things differently, and I commend Heke Parata for her hard work and focus in this area. Mr. Speaker, to the members opposite, if you keep doing what you've always done, then don't be surprised by the same outcome. Can I ask only one thing of you, and I do this genuinely. Please keep doing what you've always done, and in the next 3 years we'll work hard in the 3rd term of the National Government. Thank you.
Yes, just before I call Tracy Martin, this is to be a